I want to talk today about awe. Awe might be the most meaningful emotion a person can feel, but it's a very important emotion to try to traverse wisely. You want to traverse awe wisely. And what I'm trying to get at here is that with something like Mandarin learning, it's such a major project with so many different facets that it's very easy to get overwhelmed by everything that's going on. And that overwhelm is sometimes masking the other side of awe, which is curiosity, and a rather intense curiosity, because that's what awe is. Awe is a combination of intense curiosity and sometimes overwhelming fear. Now, you are fully engaged in the moment when you feel awe. You're listening to a symphony and you're just engrossed in the complexity of the music and the skill of all the musicians. You're looking out at the cosmos in the middle of the Pacific Ocean with no light pollution, and you're seeing, all of the stars and galaxies and the Milky Way right in front of your eyes. And there is such an engagement with the moment. But on the other hand, you're also unsure of the path ahead. When something happens that is outside of your humdrum day-to-day life, while it fully engages your attention, it can also freak you out, right? Because you don't know what comes next. And so, this feeling of awe is something that we should know how to traverse. Here's an example of something that is awe-inspiring. China's history and language are highly awe-inspiring. Imagine the scope of everything that has happened in this region of the world since the dawn of civilization. Right, just give that a little thought for a moment and you'll realize, all the language and culture that developed alongside all these people, all of whom are the same thing as I am. They're just people like me, maybe born in a different time in history, but they are just, human beings like me who got together and developed this vast historical language and culture and music and food and just these so many different things. It's positively humbling, and it's really just too much for the average person's brain to handle. And so when you're faced with the question, how do I learn this language that derives from such an awe-inspiring history, you can feel paralyzed, because where the heck do you even start, and how do you gain any sense of certainty with such a vast and awe-inspiring language in front of you? Well, here's the best advice I can give you, because remember, the curiosity and the excitement about the glorious history of a civilization can be very motivating, but the fear and the overwhelm can be very demotivating. So here's what I recommend that you do. You zoom in until you're bored, until it becomes humdrum. Right? So, and then you zoom out again. So here's what I mean. So first, try to imagine the entire Chinese language spread across a singular image. Just some huge image that has every character and word and connection on it, and, how the language would work. And of course, you probably would have trouble doing that. I mean, I have vague images of a connected neural network of language and characters and all of that, but I can't possibly conceptualize all of it because it's too vast and awe-inspiring, and so it's therefore virtually impossible to imagine it. Tens of thousands of characters, several 100,000 words, and they stretch into the absolute limits of the human innovation and understanding, and each word and character was invented to try to conceptualize a human idea. I mean, in a way, it's glorious if you imagine this whole thing. But, humans made this, right? But it's just too dang much for our brains to handle, right? So we need to zoom in. So check this out. I'm going to put on screen the top 592 characters in the language. When you imagine all that went into to create these characters, it's still quite awe-inspiring. But the difference now is that at this level, you can conceptualize mastering the subset of the language, right? So you can say, I can imagine that I could get all of this into my brain, right? It's not like the entire language, which technically nobody has ever gotten all of it into their brain. And so it's just these approximately 600 characters. And the thing about it is that these characters are 80% of the language by frequency. So people use these characters 80% of the time when they're speaking or writing or reading. This is far more zoomed in than, the entire language, but there's still a degree of awe that you can derive from it. And the difference is that you can see yourself achieving mastery at this level, or at least you will feel that way if you have a good enough guide. Now, let's zoom in even more, because even at 600, it's not very actionable, so let's zoom in even more. On the screen now, there are 10 of the components that we teach in the first phase of the Mandarin Blueprint Method course. Now take a look at them. Suddenly, not only can you imagine yourself mastering something like the leftmost component here, E, which is simply a horizontal line, but kind of looks pretty simple, right? Boring even. And now action can commence, right? So you can look at Chinese in its totality and become wickedly humbled and even paralyzed by the sense of awe that you get from that. Or you can look at the next mini step you need to take, like for example, how to learn E or the single vertical line. But the truth is that you should master the art of zooming in and out frequently. Zooming out allows you to see the bigger picture. It's an antidote to arrogance, right? So if I ever feel like, hey, I'm getting pretty good at Chinese, I'm pretty awesome at this, I've been doing it for years, whatever. The more that I look at all of the possible areas where I don't know, then it quells arrogance. It's very humbling because, of course, there's loads that I don't know. If you really imagine the whole language and you really think of all the domains of science and engineering and art and mathematics and just the many things that I know very little about, and then apply them to Chinese, it's like, yeah, look, I'm not, what I know compared to what I don't know is a valley and a mountain, right? So that's very important. It fosters the intense curiosity that can fuel you to keep going. When you zoom out, you can see, wow, this is a glorious language that's beautiful and rich and deep, and I can learn more about that the more I go in. However, it can also make you feel small, and it's hard to navigate such a vast ocean of stuff. Why should I choose to focus on one domain versus another, right? So zooming in, getting down to something like a simple component or those 600 characters and moving that zoom in and out, zooming in shows you the details of the map and where to place your next step. Put your foot here next if you want to learn something new. It offers certainty in what would otherwise be a sea of uncertainty. However, when you zoom in too far, you can miss the forest for the trees. And at this level, you can lose your humility or curiosity for the language. So suppose you master, those 10 components I showed you, and maybe you master them in like 5 minutes. You're just nailing it and you're doing awesome. You could get the false sense that you have therefore, you're really amazing at this and you're going to be the next prodigy of Chinese learning, right? And so you can lose your humility, and also it starts to get boring the more you zoom in because you can't see what it is that you're building. So at Mandarin Blueprint, here's what we do. When we started this 6 years ago, we knew enough of the big picture of Chinese. And of course, nobody can know all of it, but we knew enough of it that we were able to build a curriculum that zooms in and out at just the right frequency, right? So we stop at the end of each level and give you a nice little dose of awe. So we'll zoom out a little bit and be like, hey, look at where you are in relation to your larger goals. And we even consider things like, we're gonna zoom out to the level of the end of our beginner course, or we're gonna zoom out to the level of the intermediate course, or we're gonna really zoom out to the level of like, a super fluent speaker and all the things that they know. But we do these various levels of zoom at each level review, and that way you can get that dose of awe that will give you the inspiration, get you excited, bring that curiosity in, and then zoom back in at the next lesson and learn something specific that will matter in your Mandarin learning future. So it's a kind of a zooming in and out between actionable steps in the zoomed in state and inspiring curiosity in the zoomed out state. And you don't linger too long on the zoom out because it can freak you out. but we never forget about it. And that's really important, because the minute you forget about it is the minute you forget why you're doing it, right? Why are you even pursuing this thing? Well, it's because it's amazing. It's a glorious language of Chinese squiggles, and the way they connect to each other is brilliant, like nodes in a network that are stretching out for miles in a cultural, historical, and sort of just linguistic anomaly, because there's not really any other languages that are quite like it. It's beautiful. So you don't want to forget about it, but then you don't want to get so lost in it that you don't know where to put your foot next. So this is what we do to try to deal with it. Now, I'm assuming that if you're watching this, you're not some sort of genius. If you are, then congratulations. But if you're not, then I'm just like you. I'm a regular guy who likes to learn stuff and wants good relationships. I want to have a happy family, and I just hope to lead a meaningful life. Normal guy. So that's a long way of saying, if I can do it, then so can you. And I just want to show you something here. I'll put an image up on the screen. From about a week and a half ago, I reached 50,000 known words on link.com, which is lingq.com, Steve Kaufman's website that helps you track your progress when you're reading stuff. So, I'll read through Song of Ice and Fire in Chinese, and I read through all of the Harry Potter books on Link, and that basically Link has determined that I know about 50,000 words based on all of the reading I've done over the years. I'm happy about this, of course. And I also know that there's so much more to learn, though. So it's like, you see something like this and it could be like, wow, like that's, a lot. But at the same time, because I'm so used to traversing this feeling of awe, I know that, like, yes, this is a great moment to step back and go, wow, think of all the things I used to not know even a single word in Chinese, and now I know all this stuff. The thing is, the momentum of building up the skill consistently has long since been joyful in and of itself. And that's something that is like, I really want you guys to get, because everything that I've been saying about zooming in and out is helpful to a point, but then eventually the consistency that you build from this skill becomes so second nature that you actually don't even need to have all of these, high-minded thoughts about the scale of Chinese in general versus zooming in and seeing the next actionable step, because the interplay and the dance of the whole thing becomes a joy in and of itself. And the same can be true for you if you keep switching between that, wow, what a glorious and rich language this is, and next, I should place my foot here, right? If you keep moving between those two, you will get to this point where it just becomes natural. All you need is the map. And here at Mandarin Blueprint, we are happy to provide.